I'm back. Yay. Sorry for that interruption. Isn't that true about life? But I knew I had spoken enough. I knew that it was a good place to end telling you my story about my neighbor and trying to implement some of the things we are learning in this class. On the flow chart, it says will resolve all political conflict. You may not have a political conflict with someone you care about, one of your thous or even your yous or your neighbors, but it might be another conflict that's a difficult conversation to have. Maybe you're about to move, or maybe you're changing your major. I had a student the other day that was an engineering student at UMass Dartmouth, and he said, I don't want to be in the program anymore. And he had to have the difficult conversation with his father, really, who wanted him to be an engineer. His father was an engineer. He went into engineering because he was told to. He was in the program for almost 2 years and said, I don't like this at all. So he's leaving. That's a tough conversation. Or maybe it is Dr. Israel that we heard from the podcast. She does a lot with helping people resolve the conflicts in interpersonal relationships with gender identity and sexual preferences and transitioning if you're going to change your gender identity, right? Or if you're bisexual and you have to have that kind of conversation with someone you care about because you think it's important to the relationship to have that openness, right? That was a tough conversation sometimes, not always, right? I think of other difficult conversations I've had when my daughter was moving out. She was 21 years old. It was time for her to go. She had already left for college and came back. And she thought it was going to be a tough conversation with me, but she had no idea that I was ready for it. And so we had a really good conversation about when she was leaving, what she was taking with her, what items in the house, what she could take her bedroom set, but what else would she take, and where was she going? At one point, she was going to California, but then she was going to go to Spain. Maybe I told you this already, but she didn't. She stayed local, so I was like, phew. Because that would have been a hard conversation too. So difficult conversations, especially if you know they're emotionally based and they could cause like emotions to come out more than logic. And again, understanding your values, what matters to you, you find out what matters to the other person, take time to listening. So the flow chart is kind of cute, and I have it here on my computer, and when I put the video around to show you my computer, I know it's going to happen. It's not going to pick up. So you watch your flow chart while I'm speaking. The first bubble on the left said, do you want to have a conversation with someone who holds political views different from your own? Do you want to have this conversation? Conversation and dialogue are interchangeable. Do you want to have this conversation? If you don't, no, then don't bother. Don't do it. But if it's yes, then in the purple it says, do you want to vent, have an argument, or generate conflict? And you're like, no, I don't want to do that. Well, no. Then they say to listen. If yes, that says raise voice, interrupt, question motives. So it's kind of funny. So if you want to have an argument, raise your voice, question the motives, attack the person with you questions. You did this, you did that. That for sure you'll create an argument, right? But if it's no, then it's time to listen and use what they say I statements. Instead of pointing the finger at someone, accusing them, say, well, I feel this way or I feel that way. Do not ever make it about the other person. So it says, listen, allow uninterrupted speaking. That's hard to do. Many times we interrupt each other, right? Especially if we get emotional. Sometimes we interrupt each other because of good reasons, right? We're so excited, we're so happy. But other times because we can't even listen anymore what they're saying, and we want to get our point in. So you have to have some turn taking here. Maybe even have some rules. Say, like in the debate, you speak for 2 minutes and I'll speak for 2 minutes. But maybe you don't want anything that artificial. But the idea is that when the other person's listening, let them complete their thinking. And for many of us, when we speak, we blurt things out quickly because we think we are going to be interrupted. So if the person knows, no, there's going to be time for us, this will become more of a pattern in your relationships and hopefully will continue, right? So it says, allow uninterrupted speaking, reflect back on what you hear, use I statements, ask open-ended questions. That's the tell me more part of this. That's one thing we've been hearing so much from the behaviorists and psychologists. When you're having a conflict, find out the underlying feelings. Tell me more. And just be patient to listen. And it's not easy to listen when you're listening to any ideas that are in conflict of your own. So no judging. So be, and it really does pay off. It really does. And then over here it said, do you want to understand their perspective? If it's no, well, rethink why you're even having this conversation. But if it's yes, you do want to know, then you go to this side. And it says perspective taking. Be curious and non-judgmental. Really focus on the other person. Assume they have positive intentions, right? Goodwill, right? Ask questions. Float hypotheses. Try advocating for their position. That's what I was trying to do with my neighbor. Consider why they might hold their views. Take the other side, dual perspective. For even for sake of argument, go into the other person's point of view and try to sound it out. What does it sound like? Now, this goodwill only works if the other person has goodwill as well, right? I mean, it has to be reciprocal. If you're speaking with someone who's about to rob your house, well, we kind of have imbalance here. So this only works when you can respect the other person and you can understand that there is a potential for goodwill to agree to disagree. It's a beautiful thing. What's happened in our country because of so many lies that are just being said over and over again, and people are like just shaking their heads yes, as if it's true, and then you shake your head 3 times enough and the other person is going to believe it. That's a psychological trick, If you can get someone to agree with you 3 times and demonstrate it by they shaking their heads, their body is getting involved, so they're reinforcing the message, more than likely they're going to believe you. So think of how many lies we've been hearing on a nationwide perspective. You don't need masks. The virus is going away. You keep having that repeated and you want to hear that, right? So you're already trying to say, please be it true. Please let it be true. Even though you know it's not true, you will start to believe it. And it is a sign of brainwashing and a sign of manipulating. And that's when it's not balanced. Now, there could be other reasons to vote a certain way, and each political party has its pluses and minuses. The same thing if you're moving out of the house, there's pluses or minuses, or you're changing your major, you're changing your gender, or you're going to take a new job, or you're leaving, or whatever it is that's been upsetting a conflict. Hopefully, the other person can see the side of it. Unless it's something blasphemous, like someone's robbing your house or something evil or criminal that's going on. And that has happened in our country. We've seen criminal behavior. And because we are of goodwill, we keep trying to justify it. And there's a point where there's no more justifications. Just to say, if you think I'm giving you too much of my political views, I am sorry. But I'm talking about lies versus truth. You can agree to disagree. And with goodwill, it's easier to do than not. So when you continue on this, it's interesting toward the end. It does get political because it's about political conflict. It said, do you understand their perspective? Can you treat them with respect? This is right in the purple box toward the bottom, the rectangle purple box. If not, go back to listening and perspective taken. If so, and if you still want to try to persuade them, carry on. And then they say, liberals and conservatives all have morals, but they have different priorities. Where are they on the political spectrum? And so they have a list of what this author, Dr. Israel, says what's on the left and then what's on the right. On the left, she says, for a liberal, appeal to their sympathy, compassion, nurturance, rights, and justice. That's definitely me. To the right, my neighbor, right? Loyalty, obligation, authority, respect, tradition, social order, purity, and sanctity. To him, his business is pure and it is very sacred. It's a sanctity to him because it's his family's, bread and butter. So you can see it from both sides. Does it mean if you took those 2 lists, you couldn't blend them together and they describe who you are? Sure. I'm sure there are. But you've noticed we try to pigeonhole or put people in boxes so we can understand them. But there's nobody is just in one box. We all have different parts of us, dimensions of us. So even when we did the Myers-Briggs, now there's nobody that's totally one way or another. There's always, you know, shades for moving. So this was an interesting flow chart. I like this author. I read her book. It's psychology. The reason I even found her, I was looking this summer for research. I think her book came out in August of this year. And I'm always looking for fresh research. My degrees came from old research, right? Not that they're not valuable, they really are. We still go back to Carl Jung and from almost the turn of the centuries, from 1800 to 1900, not from 19 to the 2000s. So we go way back with our research, and that we still see as viable. That's not the word I mean. That's germane. That's viable and pertinent right now. But I was looking for I was looking for newer perspectives, new research, and then I found Dr. Israel. She's probably about 10 years younger than me, but that's still young. Younger is younger. And what are people speaking about? So when you listen to her, you might have heard some of that terminology before, and I do look for research in my field, interpersonal communication, and I haven't seen any fresh research, so I go back to the psychologist. But it is germane. Active listening, definitely. Perspective, taking another person's point of view, taking time with each other, conflict resolution, and then with Katie, with our discussion board, when she talks about the natural forms of different relationships and where they might go. Before you terminate a relationship, I suggest you try to take some time to listen, to see really what are your values, what are their values, his or her values, and where you can find some common ground. And sometimes you just can't. I'm not saying that everything has to, that all conflicts have to be resolved, but if you want to maintain and build on relationships, at least this is some strategy or something to think about. Hope you're having a good week, and thank you for listening to me. That interruption was just typical for me, and I do apologize, but I think most of you who are very busy is being very busy, juggling a lot of plates. Take care of yourself. I recently came down with a case of shingles. I have shingles right now because you're not going to get them, and if you know anything about shingles, it's like, ugh. It's crazy, and I don't even know how I got them, but it's a viral infection, and did I have the shingles shot? No. Will I get it now? Sure. I had the flu shot, but I've never had the shingles shot, and my doctor was saying, you are so old. Why didn't you have the shingles shot? I said, well, I get the pneumonia shot, the whooping cough shot, the flu shot. I thought I was all shot. I thought I was good. I was all shot already. Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable. And it plays on your nerves. It's what happens. So you lose patience with yourself and with others. So knowing I've just started, and they say it can take 3 months to get through your system. So good thing I'm home, right? Because if I had this in class, I wouldn't come for a couple of weeks, so I wasn't contagious. And that was my daughter calling, asking if she could bring over food, because I haven't been going grocery shopping, but I haven't been doing it. It's lousy to be sick, but I'm not too sick to talk to you, and I'm not too sick to listen and to read and to be supportive. So I'm still here. But you take care of yourself and stay away from germs. Wear your mask. Bye-bye.